Hi there, this is Photography of Director podcast, and my name is Vitaly Bokser. I'm a cinematographer and I work on all sorts of different projects, and I've decided to do a podcast about other filmmakers. Today we're chatting with Jesse Tendler. He's a producer on multiple indie films, and some of them in fact we worked on together, including Other Plans, which he produced for me. But as many may not know, you might have seen him on TV. Jesse used to be a child actor and did quite well for himself until he gave up the glamorous Hollywood life, which we'll go into this podcast. We have some great stories from Jesse, so make sure to listen to the entire episode, and definitely some gems for those indie filmmakers trying to make a film. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes with a video or audio only feed. Just look up Photography of Director. And all the links to the films we chat about can be found on photographyofdirector.com. Please enjoy the show. Okay, so here we are, Photography of Director. It's me, Vitaly, and today we have Jesse Tendler. How's it going, Jesse?
Good, it's going well, Vitaly.
So you're basically everything. You're an actor, you're a producer, you're a script supervisor, you're a locations expert, you're a director. Did I say director?
Sometimes a director as well.
I said producer? Okay, but basically every crew name there is, and you've done it all across the board. Am I correct?
Almost. I have never been a production sound recordist or a makeup artist or a costume designer.
Well, you got to get started.
Yeah, I got to work on this.
So tell us.
It's not even true. I've done sound on some small stuff, but never makeup and hair.
And the reason I have you on, just to let the good folks know, we spoke to Evan Matthew Weinstein, who did Leaving Circadia, and I met him through you. You were the producer on that film. But we've worked a lot on a bunch of different projects, so probably like 5-6 different things in the
both shorts and features over the years.
Right, cool. So tell us who you are and how you got started.
Okay, sort of a long story, so I'll give you the abridged version. I got into the industry when I was 3.5 years old.
Right, so
as an actor.
As soon as you can walk.
Then, yeah, basically. Actually, I was walking a little bit before that, but yeah. But I started off doing National Network commercials and sitcoms, TV movies, stuff like that. And from the age of about 3.5 until 14, was acting very regularly. Did about 100 National Network commercials. Was a regular on a couple different sitcoms. Did some TV movies that I co-starred in.
And this is all before the age of 10?
This is all before the age of like 13, 14, yeah.
So I wanted to discuss one, I'll just bring it up real quick, but here's your IMDb page, and it has your actor credentials. Mm-hmm. The Ellen Burstyn Show, I didn't see it, but apparently that was like a big show with some good people on it, yeah?
That was an amazing experience. That was in 1986, and there were 4 of us who were the regulars, the leads on that show. It was Elaine Stritch as the great-grandmother, Ellen Burstyn as the grandmother, Megan Mullally as the mother, and myself as the son. And it was basically about 4 generations living under one roof, and the hilarious mayhem that ensued.
It sounds like it was hilarious. So why did it end? What happened? You could have been Macaulay Culkin. What happened?
Funny how that works. Yeah, I could have. I actually, strangely enough, auditioned with him all the time when I was younger. And I was like, for example, it came down to, I think, 3 of us for Home Alone, and he got it.
Oh, you auditioned for Home Alone?
Yeah, I auditioned for all the same stuff that he did and that same group of people did. And came down to the final cut many times.
Holy crap.
But I worked on the Ellen Burstyn Show. The show actually had great ratings, did really well, and got picked up for a second season. And then there were some arguments behind the scenes among the executive producers and et cetera, and ended up being some animosity in the background, and it got canceled because of that, unfortunately.
Oh, so it wasn't even the ratings. It wasn't that people didn't like it.
It had great ratings, actually. And Mike Nichols was actually one of the producers on it.
Damn, that sucks. Yeah. Because you could have been hanging out with Macaulay Culkin right now, doing drugs.
Totally. Hopefully not.
And then you did another thing, which, hold on, let me just bring that up. It's called A Secret, and Kirk Douglas was your father or your grandpa?
Kirk Douglas was my grandfather.
Because I see you two hugging. Here you two are hugging in a nice picture.
Yeah, The Secret was a TV movie. It was an Easter Sunday Hallmark special with a foreword by Barbara Bush, and it was about a boy and his grandfather who have dyslexia and how their family comes to terms with that.
What happened to that? Did it do well?
Yeah, I mean, it was a television movie, so it was only meant to play once, and it did, and a lot of people watched it.
Now, are you still getting royalties from those things? Let's be honest about this.
I still get very tiny checks in the mail every now and then. I get residuals from I was a Grouchketeer on Sesame Street.
Nice.
So every once in a while, I'll get a check for $2.17 from Sesame Street.
They're still playing it. They're still playing those episodes from the 90s. Is this the 90s?
Yeah, they play them also in all over the world. So whenever they translate them into a new language and have a new contract in Singapore or whatever, everyone that's how the union works. You get a small percentage of that as residual.
You should audit. You should audit Sesame Street because you probably have a couple $100 there.
I trust them. I trust Sesame Street. Although, maybe I shouldn't.
So you were doing really well. I wanted to bring this up because I usually talk to filmmakers, not just actors. You have to come on this podcast, right? This is the cream of the crop, all right? This is. So we talk to filmmakers, and so that's why I brought you on, because you're not just an actor. You do act still, but you also direct and write and produce a bunch of stuff, and you produced a bunch of stuff we did.
Yep.
So what happened there that you failed and went to producing? Since you were making that actor money.
The funny thing is that even though I was a successful actor for years, first of all, it's really difficult to make the transition from child actor to adult actor. And then the other issue is that I was doing really well academically growing up, and I excelled at math and science and pretty much any academic subject.
The opposite of Macaulay.
Let's not keep comparing. He's doing fine for himself now.
Yes. So what happened that basically you gave up all that money and decided to become poor as a producer? What happened?
It was a bit more than just a sudden decision. There was a long transition of growing up that happened in between. Basically, it's difficult to make the transition, first of all, from child actor to adult actor. So when I got to high school, I quit acting to focus on academics. And also about that time, the early 90s, that was the time period when pretty much everything that was being done in New York moved out to LA. All the sitcoms, movies, everything moved to LA. So I had a choice. My agent said, you can either move to LA and keep working regularly, or you can stay in New York and maybe you'll do something every now and then. And all my family was based on the East Coast, so we decided to stay on the East Coast. And I was doing well in school. I was, really good with math and science and all my academic subjects. And so I decided to focus on that. And through high school, I didn't even do school plays because I was focusing on academics. It wasn't until the very end of high school that one of my friends convinced me to do the school play, and I remembered how much I loved acting. And then actually that was when I did my guest starring role on Law & Order toward the end of high school because I missed it so much. But I focused on my academics, got into the program that at the school that I wanted to go to, ended up going to the University of Pennsylvania for engineering and business as part of this program called the Jerome Fisher Management and Technology Program. So I spent 5 years doing a dual degree, triple major program at Penn.
All right, so you're a nerd. We get it.
And I came out of that and I was like, I have no interest whatsoever in doing the traditional career path of either engineering or business.
Right. What the fuck did I do? I just gave up all that money. Should have moved to LA, fucked everybody.
Yeah.
And did blow.
But no, I don't regret going to school and getting that academic background because I think it's helped me. By
the way, I went to school too and did get an engineering degree, just so you know. Exactly. I'm as smart as you, okay? So
but I came out of that knowing that I wanted to go back to the entertainment industry.
So basically, I just wanted to cover, you gave up acting, you gave up a possibly awesome life. Am I right?
Well, possibly.
I'm not saying your life ain't awesome.
Honestly, if you look at all the successful child actors from the period in which I was acting, and you look at where they are now,
I would rather be...
The odds aren't great, dude.
Just so you know, I'd rather be in a drug haze in my mansion than sitting in my underwear doing a podcast. So let's have that covered. But yeah, so you basically said, fuck it, I'm going to do some business, some engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point you realized, oh shit, I do want to be an actor.
Right.
And but then you also started producing. So how did that whole transition, what point did you decide to make your life even 10 times harder?
Right. That was a smart decision. No, as an adult actor, the acting world is hellish, and it's difficult, and it's challenging, and it doesn't matter how good you are. It's based on who you know, luck, connections you make, and to a certain degree, it's just based on like how hard you work at the business side of things behind the scenes, which isn't the fun part of being an actor. And so,
and you stayed in New York, right? You stayed in New York all this time?
Yeah, I stayed in New York.
You never moved to LA.
For school, I was in Philadelphia, but I came back to New York immediately after college.
You never moved to LA to pursue any of this?
No, never had any interest in going to LA.
Was that part of the problem? Would it be easier for you if you went there?
Definitely would have been easier in the past if I went to LA. I don't know if it would be easier at this point.
No, I don't mean like today. I meant when you were returning back to acting, you still sort of had some connections, I assume, right?
I had some connections, but I honestly let a lot of those connections drop over the course of those 8 to 10 years that I was out of the business because I didn't think I was going to go back to it. I thought that I was going to pursue a career in engineering and business.
Right.
And so it was more a surprise to me when I realized that that's not what I wanted to do and that I wanted to go back to the entertainment industry.
The good news is me and you could always fall back on that. Yeah. When we're 60, we're like, let's become engineers.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's ever going to happen. So, yeah, I realized as an adult actor that it made a lot of sense for me to create work for myself as an actor by producing. So
that is smart. I've always told all actors, in fact, that are like always saying, how do I do this? It's hard to be an actor. Yeah, then go make your own fucking movie,
Exactly. So that's why I started producing. And I started a production company that was originally a theater production company. And I produced a play with several friends of mine. And it was fun. It was great. And I realized I had no interest in producing theater, or at least not as my main job, because a producer in the theater world, at least in my experience, is more of a glorified administrative assistant. Whereas a producer in the film industry actually has more creative involvement in the project. Mm-hmm. So I still occasionally, over the last 8 years, I've produced theatrical projects here and there. I do maybe 1 or 2 a year, but I mainly have focused on film. And I started producing shorts and then eventually got into producing feature films. And I've also done some commercial and corporate projects, some music videos, things like that.
Right. So you chose producing one for yourself so you can act in those things as well? Is that was sort of a main motivator?
Yep, that was one of the main motivators.
Cool. And but why the producing end? Because the producing end involves basically you have to be in a project from beginning to end. You sort of can't escape that. And on indie projects, you're spending way more time working on the project than they're paying you. That's just always the case. Yeah,
it averages out to maybe 50 cents an hour. Maybe, if you're lucky.
Indie film. Hello.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you're there, you're the guy to call to fix all the problems, even when you're not on the clock, right?
Exactly.
So it's not just a production phase of it. So it's funny how, I was never a child actor, but basically I fell into DPing because everyone wants to direct, right? So I wanted to direct, and but then by accident I got good shooting because I didn't want to pay a DP. I didn't even know what it was, honestly, in the beginning when I was 10. And but the reason I do like it, or what I was getting to, is that I'm there for a day. I'm there for 3 days. I'm there, whatever. It's a short period of time. If it's a feature, it's a month, but it's never you're there. You have to be there. You know.
Right.
There's no if you don't come in the pre-production, there's no movie.
Right.
So why did you choose that harder aspect of it instead of going I don't know, a DP, a director, or maybe not a director, but somewhere along the crew lines?
I think the easiest explanation is stupidity.
You didn't know what you were getting into.
and being naive.
Was it that? Was it that?
I honestly had no clue what I was getting into. I figured that since I had the engineering and business background, I had these problem-solving skills and management skills, and so it made sense to get into producing.
But you wanted to act. That's really was your purpose.
Yeah. And I worked on a bunch of sets as a script supervisor also.
Right.
And I really enjoyed script supervising. And that is one of those jobs where you come on set, you do your job, and then you leave. And you're not responsible for anything outside of script supervising.
Right.
And I really enjoyed that. But as a script supervisor, I met everyone on set in every position, and I was able to create this, Rolodex of people who could fill any position on set. And I also witnessed a lot of producers who I felt were doing an okay job, and I could do just as an okay job as they could.
I can be as A-okay as them.
Yeah.
Right. You're trying to hit that mediocre level.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was on a lot of sets and basically said I could do this. And
you did.
That can create more work for myself creatively as well.
Yeah, and you are a good producer. I actually, even a movie that I produced called Other Plans, which we spoke about earlier in the podcast, I brought you on to co-produce because I just knew from experience you could handle it, Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, the location manager thing, maybe not.
Oh, that's the worst, honestly, the worst position of any job on set, and it's the hardest to find a good one, as you know, because we went through 5 trying to find one.
It's very hard on an indie feature to get a location manager, because some people, it's like getting a good sound man. They're only there to make their day rate. Right. They're not there for your movie. They're not there. They could care less.
They have no invested interest.
They have no right. But if you're a producer, if you're a director, if you're a DP, even some of the crew, like the gaffer, at least you have a vested creative interest in the project.
Right.
A location manager, how much are you paying me?
Right, exactly. Not to mention the fact that you're in, Other Plans, we filmed in New York City, and both of us live in the New York area or in the city, and we make films here, and there's so much production going on in New York that nobody's excited about a film being made in their backyard.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Oh, come shoot in my house, or oh, come shoot in my store or restaurant. They're like, how much are you paying me?
Yeah, that's actually true. Every time everyone's so infatuated with New York, I'm like, how do I shoot something in Texas?
Right. Well, and honestly, the projects that I've worked on, or that I've even just heard other people talk about that have been shot outside New York, they get the majority, if not all, of their locations for free.
Of course.
And half of the people who are providing them locations are also feeding them, because they're like, this is so exciting, having a film crew here.
And we're just a nuisance. In New York, we're just like roaches on the street.
Exactly. In New York, we kind of just get in the way. So, yeah, I mean, finding locations, I personally think, is the single hardest thing on an indie project where you don't have a huge budget.
Yeah, and it's hard because
budget, it's another story.
Well, indie projects, obviously, and we're talking about maybe the sub $500,000, 600,000. They don't want to spend the money on the locations person.
No.
They want to save the money for the screen, because that's where they're going to get their biggest bang. And paying the actors, you want to pay the actors, obviously, because that's how you're going to sell the movie. It's much harder to say, I have no actors, everyone sucks, but we got this great location. So
It doesn't really help.
No, it does not help. So I'm going to go to some of your movies on your IMDb. Sure. We did some of the same ones, and I've spoken on this podcast about a few. But tell us your perspective. I guess what was your first feature that you produced?
First feature was called Leaving Circadia.
Okay. So yeah, I did discuss that on a previous podcast, but tell us from your perspective, because we had the director on, sure. And I'm going to play the trailer once more in case people don't listen to every single podcast I make. So here you go.
Welcome to 30, buddy. How's it feel?
Hey, what are those?
Oh, flyers. This is for Phil's Falafel.
You ever eat it? Phil's Falafel?
No.
Me neither. You want to get him off my fucking car?
I got a lot of new people in the building, so I'm counting on you.
The shower was supposed to be fixed 6 hours ago. I called you.
Oh, yeah, the phone company shut my service off 2 days back.
I saw a new girl moved into Mrs. Sacco's old apartment.
It's a girl. She's hot.
Hi. Are you the super?
Hi, I'm the sleeper. My circadian rhythm is different than most.
Your what?
I sleep, get up, eat, all different hours.
I think you're the most unhealthy person I've ever met.
We did it raw a couple times. She thought her birth control didn't... I took her to the doctor. We got in a big argument that night. She said that she wanted to keep it if I did.
Why didn't you tell me? I have hundreds of condoms I don't use.
You are not in college anymore.
Things will always be unstable when your boss is Craigslist.
It was a pleasure meeting you. I'm not prepared for any more hurt.
I would like to continue living in this building with just 1 ounce of normalcy.
I'm gonna do everything humanly possible to make sure you get evicted immediately.
Cheers. To
New beginnings.
To new beginnings.
Do you have a habit that I'm feeding?
Me? No. I'll grab us another beer.
I mean, that movie looks really fucking cute. You know, the more and every time I see it, like even the trailer, I'm like, this is a good movie.
Right.
You know, and this is such...
No, and I've worked on a lot of films. I've seen a lot of films. Sure, maybe you and I are a little biased because we both worked on that, but I'm really proud of that project. That's one of the films that I've made that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, me too. And I've shot 14, and it's just, you know, it's not a million films, not a million features, but it's the top 3 or 4 that I've shot. So it's, and the acting is really, really freaking good in that movie. And
solid.
Oh yeah, no, but like just watching it, you like believe them, you know, you get into it right away, even from the trailer. Like I'm getting into it, I'm like, I want to see the movie again, you know.
Yeah.
So tell us from your point of view. Obviously, I was the DP on it, but you produced it. Different circumstances. Start from the beginning, because we heard Evan's story.
Sure.
A little bit, and he's a talker. So we heard Evan's side, but how did you get onto it? Like what, you know, and how did you convince him that you were the man to do it? Because this was your first. You said your first feature.
It was my first full-length feature. I got onto that project very coincidentally, actually. I had recently produced a short for a friend of mine and one of my, good buddies, good writer-director friends, and we had worked on this short together, and it just so happened that this friend of mine and Evan were working together. They, worked at the same job, and so Evan asked my friend, whose name is Guy, hey, do you know any producers? We're looking for a producer for Leaving Circadia. And Guy said, oh, yeah, my buddy Jesse, he just produced my short. He's a great producer. You should talk to him about it. And so Evan got in touch with me and then realized immediately that we actually already knew each other.
How did you know each other?
Because we have the same agent for voiceover work, and we audition together all the time.
Oh, wow.
So sort of coincidental. So we just decided, this would be an awesome project to work together on. And Evan's executive producing partners on that film, Drew and Reggie, they all knew each other from school. So, they trusted Evan's recommendation, and I met with all of them, and we all hit it off really well.
I guess because you're all actors, you're all like in a love fest.
Yeah. So we started working together on that project, and the pre-production process and even production itself went pretty smoothly.
So how long were you in pre-production? Well, what did you have to do there? And the money was already raised, right? When you sort of got there. Yeah,
we had the majority of the money raised. We spent, I think, about 6 months in pre-production on that.
Oh, wow.
But the majority of the work was that I would say 6 months of pre-production was like 4 months of being like, so how do we make a film? And then 2 months of like actual pre-production work.
And I know we don't want to talk about budgets, but this is under $500,000. Is that safe to say?
That's safe to say.
Okay, somewhere around there. So basically, it's an indie film shot in New York. Still difficult. I think it was 18-day shoot. Is that correct?
We did an 18-day principal photography shoot, and then we did an additional 3 days of shooting a couple months after principal photography.
Give us, I don't want, obviously, every single day today, but tell us what you basically did on Leaving Circadia as a producer, and What are the headaches that came along with that?
Well, there were many headaches. I think I probably slept an average of 2 to 3 hours a night throughout that 18-day period. There was no such thing as a day off. Although the crew, we shot 6-day weeks, so we did 6 days on, 1 day off, 6 day, but there was no day off for me. I was oftentimes the first person there and the last person to leave. I tried to wear too many hats and do too much.
Did you also do locations or help with locations on that?
I did. I helped with locations on that.
Well, we had some awesome locations. Was that? I think if somebody else was involved too, not only right, 2 people.
We had a few location scouts who helped us out with that.
Right, and it was awesome locations actually. We had some really nice places.
Yeah, one of our location scouts had found the apartment that we shot a majority of the film in. So that was really key for us. And yeah, we got a lot of great locations on that shoot, and it just really helped with the overall production value and the look of the film. Shooting in a casino, in the Taj Mahal casino in Jersey was amazing.
How did that get scored? Because I talked briefly with Evan. That's not on the podcast, unfortunately, but basically an indie film like ours. Mm-hmm. Succeeded in getting an entire casino, and we sort of ran the place for half the day, right? Or a full day. Yeah. I forget what it was, but
yeah, we had like half a day or a full day. Even.
Well, a half a day on the floor of the casino,
right?
Which big movies have a hard time getting.
At Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, and they were great. They were amazing.
We stopped traffic, right? We went outside. We stopped traffic. We were directing.
Yeah, we shot all over. We shot inside. We shot outside. Right. We got a lot of great footage there.
Yeah, it opens up the movie for anyone who gets to see it.
Right. Yeah, that's the first shot of the film is the casino, and then the rest of it's all pretty much in Brooklyn, a little bit in Manhattan. But that was a really key win for us. We had someone we were working with who knew of the casino and had a connection to the casino, and we contacted them and basically said, "We're making a film. It's an indie film. We have these actors, some of whom are Jersey based. Can we shoot in the film for like a day or shoot in the casino for a day, and we'll do like a press conference with these actors."
Right. So you played it smart. I do want to talk about this. You didn't just call them up and say, "Hey, can we shoot in your casino? We're a little tiny film." You said also, "We have Joe Ganascoli, who was from The Sopranos."
Yeah, so, and Sopranos obviously is big in Jersey.
Right. So we had a couple of people. Stoya, who's a famous porn star, right?
Yeah.
So I think
who is making the transition to commercial acting.
Right,
well.
Legitimate actress. I just read something that she's doing what? She's in what's that director who keeps putting porn stars in his movies?
I don't know, but she just got a role on like a major series. Was it The Nick or something like that?
Right. So she's doing good.
Yeah.
But basically, you called them up. You played it. You were savvy. I'm sorry. You were savvy about this. It wasn't like
right.
This was a savvy indie film play.
Even, the whole like, oh, have pity on us. We're small independent filmmakers. That only gets you so far and doesn't really get you very far at all in places like New York or Atlantic City.
Right.
So you have to be able to offer something in return.
Right. It works in Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to go to Ohio or, Alabama or Arkansas or Nebraska, like you can shoot an entire movie and not pay for a single location, and right. They'll probably even feed you for free.
Yeah. So you scored this casino. We basically ran the joint for like a day or two. Yeah. But like I'm saying, you actually did a PR play where you had the actors take pictures in front of the casino as their PR people took those pictures, right?
Exactly.
Right. So that's smart. That's other filmmakers can learn from that, because even if you're not paying your starring actor to be there for the full run, but you're paying some known name for one day, use him wisely.
Yep.
Yep, and that's what we did. We only had Joe Ganascoli for a couple of days, right? So.
Yeah.
And Stoya for a day or two, I think.
Right.
And who else was in it? What other names were in it? You had a couple of names, but they were all on the periphery. They were supporting actors.
Right. We had one of our other big supporting actors was Michael Cerveris, who is I think 2 or 3 time Tony winner or has been nominated many times. He, I think, won for playing the title role of Tommy in The Who's Tommy. Mm-hmm. But he's also done a lot of television work as well. He's on Fringe. He's been on several.
Right.
several
He's the weird guy in Fringe. He's in a lot of episodes.
Yeah. So he basically capped our film beginning.
The bald-headed, just to be clear, I don't know the bald-headed weird guy in Fringe.
Yeah, he was the guy who was at his car when Evan is flyering the car.
Right.
And Evan's character is Tom. So Tom's putting flyers on the car, and he says, "What the hell are you doing? Do you go to these places and get these flyers off my car?"
So I spoke to Evan about why didn't obviously he wanted to act in it. He wanted to be the star. But when you sat down with him, didn't you give him a little bit of advice and said, "Hey, you guys should take a seat and let's get a bigger name into this"? Did you ever say that to them?
We talked about it, but at the time, our 3 executive producers were all actors, and they had all gone to college together for acting, and so this film was written for them to perform in. They wrote the film for them to star in together.
I know, but did they know the consequences of that move?
I don't think so.
So, there are consequences to saying I'm not going to hire a known name into my starring role. Everyone,
right. Absolutely.
So it's a recurring theme here that someone should have stepped down. But
I honestly don't think any of us knew the consequences of that at the time.
Right.
We
or didn't think it through.
We made the film without thinking about the sales and distribution aspect down the road.
Right. See, the thing is, it was great to shoot. Like, I had a fantastic time. It was great. But at the end of the day, I also want the movie to get sold,
Right.
So the only way our careers all advance is if the movies get in front of people, right?
Yeah.
So
we thought at the time that if it was a well-made movie, which it is, with high production values, which it was, with solid acting, which it has, that it wouldn't matter if the leads weren't necessarily stars, as long as we had a couple of semi-known actors around the periphery. Of course, 4 years later, we've learned that.
In a fair world, yes.
Yeah. But 4 years later, we now know that that's not how the business of this industry works.
Right. Well, we've all wisened up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But basically, this is a movie that I feel should be in front of people. I actually think it's that good that people should be watching it. And I've shot some pieces of craps, So
yeah. Hey, every festival that the film has gotten into, we've won awards at.
That's great. But then the problem is, festivals are great. But once again, the people who, if you go to a festival where there's buyers there, they still want to know who's in it. They still. Of
course. I'm not saying that that's going to get us a distribution deal. I'm just saying that is just proof that it's a decent film. But that doesn't get it in front of the right people, and it doesn't get it sold.
So, and then, I'll move forward, obviously. This could, people are going to start yelling at me at some point. But what happened after? You guys went to, there was what happened after the production? That was smooth as fuck. And I don't want you to go deep into it because we already covered a little bit, but how long did the post-production take, and why did it take so long? Because I know it took a while.
Yeah, post-production took over 2.5 years.
Wow, 2.5 years.
3 years.
I stopped counting. Is there anything else you want to say about that, or?
I'm gonna leave a lot of it out, but I'm just going to touch on some of the key
That's
advice.
right. Well, what can you learn? Right. What can a producer teach the people listening? Right.
One major, huge, gigantic lesson is always have contracts between every member of your team up front in advance. It doesn't matter if you are the best of friends, have contracts. That is number one rule of business and filmmaking. Everything should be in writing.
Right. So we touched upon this in our pre-discussion before we recorded, but basically people forget that after you make the movie, you have to sell it.
Right.
It is a business.
Right.
And they completely ignore that aspect. A lot of filmmakers. It's not, even ones who have a lot of money, they seem to just really not want to deal with that whole business side until it's possibly too late, Yeah.
Well, that's another thing I would recommend for all filmmakers is that if your film is all artists and all creatives, then you're missing a part of your team. You, from the beginning, should have someone on your team who is solely focused on sales, distribution, financing, and that side of the business. You need someone who that's their sole focus from the beginning, not to come on later down the road, but who is interested in that aspect of filmmaking from the start.
Well, I don't want to talk to everybody who has millions of dollars to shoot a movie, obviously. I also want to talk to the really low-budget independent filmmakers. So do you have any advice for them? Because they can't afford someone who has solely to pay them enough. So how do they get someone involved? Do you have any ideas?
I mean, honestly, even if it's just like someone they know who's involved in business, who works in, the legal side of the industry or in accounting or something like that, who can be invested in that project from the beginning. Because you're absolutely not going to find anybody to do that after the fact without paying them a hefty sum of money.
Right. So even before they shoot anything, they should just get this settled.
Yeah, get them on board as a co-producer or an executive producer or whatever, so that they have vested interest in the film.
Well, there you go. You've hit on a point where when you can't pay somebody, you should give them a piece of your product. So
absolutely,
offer them a percentage.
Yep.
I mean,
ownership. They're involved in directing that ship.
Right. Treat it like a startup, basically.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you don't get somebody involved in a startup after the startup's already rolled out. You get people involved in the very beginning.
Right. So so that was 2 points. Do you have any more? Any more words of wisdom?
I do. One very key point of wisdom is, even if you assume that people are going to be knowledgeable, technically speaking, in terms of and smart in terms of backing up footage, don't assume that they are.
What does that mean?
Make sure that there's always a second set of hard drives for the editing.
Okay, this is a very, you might as well get specific on this one.
God. Okay, so on Leaving Circadia, we had 3 sets of hard drives for all of our footage. We had it backed up in triplicate, and that was smart. That's what you should do. At very least, you should have 1 set of backups, but 3 is ideal. And you store them all in separate locations, each set in a different location, so that if something happens to one location, you still have the others. Great. When you start editing, you also need a backup set of drives for the editing you're doing. You don't just edit and save to one drive. We had a hard drive fail, the hard drive that we were editing on, and I had no idea at the time that it wasn't being backed up. And we found out that it wasn't. And so we lost so much work, months of work.
So I actually didn't know that this happened. So yeah. You're saying, I think the editor was cutting on Final Cut, am I correct? Back in the day?
So
he never saved his Final Cut project?
We saved the Final Cut project file, which means that we had the cues, we had the list of files, which means that we were able to reassemble it in under a month. In just a couple of weeks, we were able to reassemble it from...
So what did you lose, just the raw data?
We lost the raw data. We also lost a bunch of the sound cues that had been added in.
Mm-hmm.
Because those...
So you sort of had to... but you had the project, so it sort of pieced it together, but you might have had to find missing files, recreate some stuff, that kind of thing, right?
We lost any of the visual effects that had been added in. We lost any of the sound effects that had been added in. Those were completely gone because those had only been saved on the hard drive that was being used for editing.
Right. That's not good.
No. Not much.
So 3 pieces of advice. Get a contract, back up your footage. What was the second one again?
It was have somebody involved from the beginning.
Right, a business person involved.
Sales and distribution side.
You have another one, or are those the gems?
Obviously, the get a known actor if you can.
Number 4, get a known actor.
Yeah.
I would totally go on that one.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So that was, unless you have anything to say about Leaving Circadia, we can move on to maybe the next one.
Sure.
Okay, we'll go to the commercial project then.
Sure.
And that's the one we did called Other Plans, which I produced and shot, and you co-produced.
Yeah.
So, why don't we hear it from your perspective instead of mine? Okay, so I'm going to play the trailer once again in case people have not seen this, which they should have by now. You should be listening to every podcast I make.
This entire podcast is actually just an advertisement for Other Plans.
True.
never gonna wear that.
I work with this.
Are we done conducting the New York Pops?
Holy! It's time to go now. Clock is ticking. You got a woman waiting. And you're gonna need a ride.
Hey, where you going? We're meeting now.
Huh?
Listen up. Russell Hazelton. He's the head of the publishing division. The man is like Bigfoot. Few has ever seen him.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm Claire Combs. I'm managing your account, Mr. Hazelton.
Excuse me?
Don't worry, I won't say anything. I know you like your privacy. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Okay.
The Russell Hazelton, the billionaire baby.
He was handsome.
You finally meet the girl that you've been pining and whining after for what, 2 years? You let her think that you're a billionaire.
Yes. She's reasonable. I'll explain everything to her. There's something I have to tell you. Hey. Oh, no.
Can I help you?
Are you Claire Combs?
Who are you?
Oh, Russell Hazelton. Look, there must be some misunderstanding. I can
I
prove.
have pepper spray.
Have you gone mad?
That is not Russell Hazelton.
Why not just go clear everything up?
I can't.
Who are you?
This is just a simple case of mistaken identity.
I have a life, and I have built it, bit by bit by bit. I can't just change.
Honey, this isn't some passing fancy. You're actually in love. The miracle in the kiss of the right woman changes the rhythm of a man's heart.
Your life plan is actually preventing you from having a life.
Stop! You can't do this.
So, I mean, tell us about other plans and how you got involved and what was the story in your own words.
Well, other plans, I mean, you guys came to me with other plans, I would say 1.5 years before we actually started shooting it. And we had started working on it then, trying to find the right cast for it, trying to find the right locations.
Was that an interesting experience, actually? Because what we did, we actually waited for the right cast that we can afford with our money, of course, you know?
Right.
So that must have been different. Well, it's different from me, you know, in terms of most of the features I work on, where they basically set a date.
Right.
They shoot it no matter what happens. Right. And we did not, me personally, there was no way I was setting a date until we had someone we could bank on, which was Jamie Kennedy in our case.
Right.
So was that like weird for you to go through that at all?
A little bit. I mean, the weirdest part, well, we had a little bit of like drama in advance when we were trying to get locations managers because we couldn't find anyone who was, capable or competent. But
we did hire one guy, remember? And then he sort of stole some money, basically.
Like I said,
he gave it back eventually, by the way. But we hired somebody. He ran off, and he was like quote unquote legitimate. Like, what's wrong with these people?
Hey man, that's locations in New York for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then you guys were waiting for the right cast to come along. I think the hardest part for me in the waiting was not knowing exactly when it was going to get shot, and then when you guys finally locked Jamie in and were ready to go forward, you gave me 3 weeks.
Right. Well, yeah, you realize when we locked, it was like, when he's locked, he's ready to go now. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
we had to negotiate for.
Yeah. But no, that was a challenge because putting together an entire feature film in 3 weeks is not easy. And fortunately, it was a group of us doing it. I wasn't producing it alone. You and Joe were producing, and then
we had Kira.
Kira was helping out with the production, and our AD Joan was helping with some of the production elements as well.
So actually, I mean, you bring up a good point, which I didn't even think of earlier, that we sort of all came together to.
Yeah, it was teamwork.
Yeah, to make
honestly,
it happen.
That's how indie films have to get done. They have to get done by a team of people working together to accomplish the impossible, which is making a film on an indie budget.
Right, and we shot the whole thing in roughly 12 days, I believe.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we did that is because our budget didn't allow us to have Jamie Kennedy for 25 days,
Right.
And he's our star. So we have to make it all work, obviously. And I mean, the other thing we did, which was, you know, like even though we budgeted for 12 days, I own the gear. I can go shoot some B-roll if I had to without getting everybody involved. So that sort of loosened up those restrictions, and sort of we didn't have to get B-roll while we're shooting as much, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tell us during the production. I mean, from your take of it, how did it go? Was it smooth? Was it bumpy? Was it?
It was bumpy.
You can go into it.
Parts of it that were smooth.
Let's get into the truth here. This is the truth, the podcast, all right?
I know what you want me to sugarcoat it. No, there were aspects of it that were super smooth, and there were aspects of it that were super bumpy. Rocky. We had most of our locations were pretty good. You know, we had some issues in terms of like using a whole office, and then when we were done at the end, being like, okay, having the whole crew in here for several days, we've not, I wouldn't say done some damage, but we've marked it up a bit. So we had to deal with that aspect, which is kind of an inevitable part of any film shoot.
Well, that's the thing. It is inevitable. If you're going in with like 3 tons of gear into someone's house or office, right, if you think you're not going to scratch anything, you are delusional.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we were pretty careful. I mean, we did a good job of cleaning up after we finished. We
were lucky, actually. You know, I do want to tell this story because I didn't even talk to this with Joe. That office that we got, it was only because the guy wanted to be an actor.
Right.
So I made a deal with him, basically, for a little bit of back end and to be an actor in the movie. And he was good. So the thing is, actually, he was good. So it wasn't like we put the worst actor in the world in.
Right.
But it was part of what we had to do as an indie film to get it done and get it into under budget, because imagine how much an office space for 4 days in Manhattan costs.
Yeah.
The run of it, to shut it down, so nobody's there bothering us, so no one's talking in the background. I mean, we went to a lot of places. You were there with me, right?
Oh, yeah.
And people wanted way too much money. It was like $10,000 a day at some places, with
absolutely,
plus another $500 to $1,000 for the use of the elevator with the union guy.
Right. Well, and half the places that we looked at too were empty offices that we would have had to completely design. You know, have our art department come in and create from scratch.
Which is impossible basically for us. So we had to find a sort of finished office that sort of met our requirements. We did some work on the office we chose, because we still had a production designer, and she dressed it up and made some signs. I mean,
she did a lot of
right,
dressing work on it, because we had the whole like magic garden, secret garden sort of theme that had to be created.
And that movie, we didn't discuss about Leaving Circadia, but Leaving Circadia, when do you think it'll be released so people can watch it?
We're actually in talks with some distributors right now, so I'm hoping within the next 6 months.
And the reason I bring that up, because Other Plans is also close to being released as well, so maybe people can watch both of these movies in, 6 months from now, or something like that. Well, let's get into the distribution aspect of it with Leaving Circadia.
Which brings me to another one of the, going back to main lessons learned.
This is rule 5 now.
This might even be 6, but this should actually be one of the top 3 rules for indie filmmaking, which is find out what you need to have as the package of deliverables before you make the movie, so that you're prepared after you're done with the movie to be able to hand that stuff over to a potential sales agent or distributor. Because if you're scrambling to get that stuff after the fact, first you're going to find out that you didn't get certain things in the first place that you can no longer go back and get.
Right.
But it'll also just save you a lot of time and money in the long run.
Yeah, let's go into some examples, because this is actually really useful. I'm not sure what Leaving Circadia asked, but there was probably they wanted pictures on set of the lead actors in wardrobe doing these things, and if there's no still photographer there taking those pictures, then the only thing you have is your camera and pulling stills, basically.
Indie filmmakers do not have any sense of the importance of still photography, set photography on films. I've seen that over and over and over again, where they think that it's like a nice bonus to have a photographer on set for a day to get a couple of shots. No, you need to have a set photographer on set for, if not the entire shoot, at least the majority of it, and make sure that you get every single character in action, especially any of your leads or name actors or semi-name actors. Set photography is so important, because that's a major deliverable for a distributor.
Yeah, and the reason it's a major deliverable is because they take those pictures, they crop out the lead actor or the main actor or the star, and they fit him on a box cover, and they do all the things they have to do, because otherwise they're never going to get that actor in again.
Right.
Like, that's a whole other cost, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So actually, and to separate what we did in other plans, we did have a still photographer there for half the shoot. We couldn't afford a whole shoot, I believe. And we did have a videographer as well who did a lot of behind the scenes, which we still have, which might be part of our DVD package and all that, or something like that, additional content for people who want to see it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that's really critical. And that's part of the actual deliverables by the seller's agent or the distributor. They make you give them that. And if you don't have it, you're technically breaking the contract if you sign it.
Right.
What are distributors asking you for, you know, that you guys are having a hard time getting because maybe you didn't do it, or it's not in a format that you have it in ready?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, we did have pretty much everything. We were lucky that we had almost everything except for some contracts that we just hadn't done for whatever reason.
Oh, no. Oh, it's good that you're bringing that up, because, yes, one of the things a seller's agent or distributor will ask, the chain of title, it's called.
Yeah.
And you have to show that, all the producers have signed on for the movie, all of the actors, all of the crew, all the co-producers, all the script super, all of them. Everybody has to give a contract in as part of chain of title.
Yeah, you have to have a contract, deal memo, whatever you want to call it, for every single person who has ever worked on the film.
Especially the people making it.
Right, especially the people making it. But also, you know, every crew member, every actor, every location, you have to have location agreements. Theoretically, you need releases from any sort of background actors or extras.
And music, if you're using any, and things like that.
Absolutely. The music, you have to have, you know, a release for the music. There are a lot of different things that you need releases for.
And, I mean, anyone starting out, I know we're talking to a wide range of people, but for people starting out, where the hell did I get that stuff?
Where do you get a contract?
Where do you get all those forms? Yeah. Jesse Tendler at...
Yeah, seriously. Well, hire a producer who actually knows what they're doing and has done it before and has all those forms on file.
That's actually some good advice, that basically hire someone who's already done it once or twice, and he already has all that stuff. It's not rocket science to have that. You just need it.
Yeah, you should never make a film if you don't have any of that stuff and don't know what you're doing.
Right. You always get somebody who's at least doing that. And like you said, get someone, there's a director-producer who's creative, and then there's the producer who's not supposed to be creative. He's supposed to watch, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's, etc.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
And honestly, also, you know, there's so much paperwork behind the scenes that people don't even realize. And a lot of people don't know that, like, there's all the SAG-AFTRA agreements that you have to sign, all that paperwork. And, you know, maybe you're applying for the New York State tax credit, because New York State now has a 30% tax credit for both production and post-production. And that's a huge amount of money to get back as a tax credit.
I'm glad you got into the tax credit, actually. So tell us, can you give us a brief summary of the process of getting a tax credit in New York?
Sure. You need to start weeks, if not months, before your film is being made.
Months.
Yeah, I would say at least 1 month, if not more, before you're planning on actually shooting it. And you contact the governor's office, and you let them know that you're planning on shooting a film and that you're interested in applying for the tax credit, and then they send you a whole bunch of paperwork to fill out. And you fill out your projected budget and the key people who are working on the film and your intended locations and all that information. And it doesn't have to be exact. Like, obviously, a month or two before your film is being made, there's still a lot that's changing.
Right.
So you don't have to wait until you have everything set in stone to start that process. In fact, you shouldn't wait until you have everything set in stone, because by that point in time, it's too late.
Right. Yeah, it's more of like this is our rough blueprint, and then they approve the tax credit based on that.
Right.
And then later on, when you're ready to give them the final accounting of it, that's when the final number is determined.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're ever working with a producer or a line producer who says, no, we don't need to apply for that yet, we can wait until we actually have all of our locations locked down, then they're just being lazy. You know, you can start that way in advance.
Right. And the other thing you have to do is tell them about the studio requirement, which is a
Yeah.
Shitty requirement.
That's the main requirement. You have to shoot 75% or more of your movie in New York State, and you have to shoot at least one day in a qualified production facility, which for short we'll call it a QPF. So these QPFs, there's a whole list of them on the governor's office website, and it's not easy or not difficult to find that list. They will send it to you if you can't find it online yourself. But it basically has a list of both the tier 1 and tier 2 qualified stages.
And on top of that, you have to build a set.
Right. You have to build a 3-walled set. That's
which it's not the craziest thing to do, but it's just annoying if you don't need it, but you need the tax credit, then you have to figure it out.
Right. You have to figure out something to shoot there that you can use in your film. But in the end, it's very much worthwhile. You might spend an extra couple of $1,000s just to shoot in a qualified production facility, but you'll be getting back tens of thousands of dollars from the tax credit, so it's well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I would say any project that has a budget of $50,000 or more should be applying for the tax credit.
Right. I mean, because also it's free to apply. It's not like if a filmmaker wants to fill out his forms, no one charges you anything. You just apply, right. And then
there's no fee.
And the people there are nice, and they actually help you if they want.
Absolutely.
If you're not an asshole to them, basically.
Right.
So.
They're not trying to not give you money. They are.
Right.
They're there to help you out and to get you the credit.
Right.
So, if you submit something and it's not right, they'll say, "Oh, we need you to resubmit it and fix this, this, and this." They're super helpful.
Exactly. And if you're one of those filmmakers who's pleasant and nice to them, like you said, they're actually going to guide you through it and help you out with
Absolutely.
that. And
same thing with the Mayor's Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting. They're super helpful as well. You have to go through the Mayor's Office for the permit process in New York, which, by the way, that's another thing that I would give lots of advice to
Lesson
filmmakers
7.
about.
Everybody listen.
Yeah, I mean, when you apply for a permit, it's a single $300 fee for one permit for the entire length of your production. So first of all, if you have a 12-day shoot or an 18-day shoot, don't put the exact dates of your shoot on the permit, because then what you're going to have to do is when you have to go back and shoot an extra couple of days later, because inevitably you often have to do additional shooting, you then have to apply for a whole new permit. Apply for a permit that's a 2-month-long permit, and then you can shoot any time in that 2-month window, and it's still covered under the same $300 fee.
I didn't know that, so that's good to know. The other thing that at least New York does, we're talking about New York here, I'm sure other places have, not exactly, but similar guidelines, hopefully, that people can take away from this.
Well, LA is a nightmare. LA charges...
Oh, yeah, forget about that. I'm talking about other reasonable locations.
Right.
Florida.
Yeah.
But cops in New York, which is really amazing, you don't pay them at all, as opposed to LA, which you pay them for per hour use type of a thing.
Right.
New York covers the cost of the cops helping you out, and they will block traffic, they will give you a police car, they will do whatever the hell necessary that you don't kill anybody.
The caveat there is that you have to have gone through the Mayor's Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting and gotten an official permit first.
Of course.
And then you have to do all of the permitting process for whatever it is that you need at least 4 days in advance, preferably more if you can. Indie films are difficult because sometimes things are changing at the last minute.
Right.
But theoretically, you're supposed to give them at least 72 hours to be able to set that up. But yes, if you've paid the $300 fee to get your permit that covers your entire shoot, then if you need help from the police department, if you need them to have a car ready, a police car ready so that they can help you while you're doing a driving shot, that's free. You don't have to pay anything extra for that.
That's amazing. It's an amazing thing New York does.
For you, they'll do whatever you need. The only thing that you actually have to pay extra for is if you're involving tow trucks. There is a per tow truck fee that I don't remember the exact figure, but it's something around like $250.
Oh, you're saying if you need a road blocked off and then there's some asshole standing in the spot that you need,
right.
You got to tow him.
If you need towing done, then you have to pay per tow truck.
Right.
But besides that, there's no fee for the police to help you out to shoot, which is a wonderful.
I didn't know that too. I didn't know some of these details because I don't produce projects that close down streets. I just shoot them. So, but basically, if you get one tow truck to tow 10 cars, it's still the same fee.
Right.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's worth it. $250 to make sure that your shot looks great.
Yeah.
That's worth it on any indie film, I feel.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, this is actually practical advice you're giving us.
Yeah, that's the point, right?
How much does my audience owe you? Do you have a tip jar?
They can look me up and email me to work on their next project.
There you go. Jesse is open to working on other films, so hit him up. And I get 10% of everything he makes, so there you go.
Intimationproductions@gmail.com.
There you go. He's giving his email. All right, so let me go to maybe your last project that's a feature that you currently did called In the Dark, right?
Yes.
And I can't show a trailer for this, but let me see what I have
not
here.
done yet. We just finished the film.
And so tell us a little bit about it while I have the Facebook page up, which you can look up In the Dark on Facebook. Or in the Dark with Us film on Facebook. I just looked up In the Dark, and so tell us what is it about.
So In the Dark is a horror feature that is about demonic possession. The lead actress in it is a psychology student who's doing her PhD on parapsychology and its relevance in modern psychology, and she's interviewing a renowned parapsychology specialist about the supernatural in psychology. And in order to learn more and get a better background on the subject, the professor takes the lead actress along with her to investigate a claim. And they go to visit a house that has had some supernatural activity. And the lead is, of course, trying to prove that supernatural does not exist. And the professor is trying to figure out ways to deal with the supernatural force that she knows inhabits this house and the people in it.
So this is basically a real horror movie. You're supposed to be afraid at the end of the day.
You are supposed to be afraid. This is not a comedy.
This is not a comedy horror movie.
So I really hope that people are more afraid when they watch this than they are laughing.
So how long did you spend making this movie? And
this was a 13-day shoot. So a short shoot. Indie budget. So we were, again, under $500,000. So we're working with very limited resources. And had to make the best use of our time.
And what stage right now? You're just in post, you said?
We're in post right now. We just locked picture a matter of weeks ago, and it's now all the files have been turned over to our post sound studio, to colorist, to the composer. So, and for horror, actually, I would actually, a couple of key points for horror. One, post is a large part of horror filmmaking because it's such a huge part of the film. I mean, visual effects, the sound, the score. If you watch a horror film with the sound turned off, it's not scary. I don't care how well made it is. There's nothing scary about a horror film that's silent.
Freddy Krueger always scared me.
Yeah, and if you watch it, it's because of the noise. It's because of the sound.
Right, the scraping on the wall.
Watch a horror film with the sound off, and it is not frightening at all. But with the noise, with the sound,
So is this an effects-heavy movie? Is this like a real supernatural, ghosty type of a thing?
We had it. There isn't a ton of supernatural. It's actually a lot more based on the psychology and the relationships than it is based on like gore and blood and guts and supernatural type stuff. However, we had a great special effects studio who we worked with and some amazing special effects artists on set. So we were able to do some pretty cool effects.
What was the studio? Do you want to give them a shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a studio called Monster in My Closet. And they're based in New Jersey, but they do a lot of work in the city. They've worked on a lot of big films actually as well. Done creature work on some major Hollywood films. And
so I mean, this is good. So basically, you got a good studio to do your horror part of it, and people who make bigger movies, right?
Yeah.
And you got them on an indie level. So how did that discussion go? How did you get them?
Well, there were a few different ways that worked. First of all, we consolidated our days of special effects so that, we didn't have to have the special effects artist on set for the entire shoot. So we only had that person on for certain days.
That's smart.
So we minimized our costs that way. We also just, to a certain degree, had to minimize the effects we could use. But the other aspect also is that the guy who runs that company, he was busy on several different projects. So we couldn't pay him enough to be on our shoot. However, we could pay enough for him to send one of his, regular office special effects artists. So we didn't have the guy who runs the company on set, but we had somebody who he knows and trusts and works with regularly, who was our special effects artist.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure that'll make all the world of difference to have that's such an important part in a horror movie that if you make it really cheesy and shitty, then forget about it.
For sure.
So you think it's scary, you personally?
Well,
were you scared on set?
Here's the thing. People who have watched the film, who had nothing to do with the film, think it's scary. I don't, because I was there on set every day watching it being made.
You're like, that's just fake.
So I'm like, oh, I remember that take. Oh, I remember who was standing next to me when we were recording that. So it's not going to be scary.
That's when the monster farted.
Yeah, I mean, I produced it, but I also was the first AD. So I was, running the set.
Once again, too many hats, man. Too many hats.
Too many hats, indeed. I will second that, actually. I was also filling various other roles on set too, because other people weren't doing their jobs. But that's another story for another day. Yeah. But yeah, it was a challenge. I was definitely wearing a lot of hats. But being behind the scenes on a horror film, you see it in such a way that when you actually watch it, it's impossible to be scared anymore.
Right.
Because you saw it being created.
Right. Well, no, you're right about that. I just shot a horror too, but it's like a drama horror, so it's not meant to be. It's meant to be frightening in parts, but really it's just a drama, covered up with horror parts. This leads me to my last question. Well, basically, tell us about the fact that you're shooting a niche now, right? Mm-hmm. A horror is supposed to be supposedly a niche thing, even though everybody watches it. I don't know why is it a niche, but filmmakers are, why did you sign up to this project? Was it specifically to get sold? Was that like the reason to sign up?
I worked on this project, and the executive producer wanted to invest in this project because horror films sell, pure and simple. Horror films have the best rate of sales. I mean, like percentage of films that sell of any genre out there. And the other interesting thing about horror films is that it's the only genre where you don't necessarily have to have an A-list or name actor to sell the film. Mm-hmm. You can sell a horror film if it's a good horror film. There's a cult following for horror films that have no name actors in them whatsoever.
Well, also not just cult, but Paranormal Activity and all of those.
Like mainstream, right? You got like Paranormal Activity, and you had back in the day the Blair Witch Project. Those are horror films that had nobody known in them whatsoever that sold really well. And to a certain degree, horror films actually sell better when the audience doesn't know who it is, because then they don't see an actor playing a role. They see people, involved in this horrific situation. Where I think to a certain degree, if you have a name actor in a horror film, you're seeing the actor as opposed to seeing people undergoing something horrific.
Right. So it's a business decision that you made in terms of, let's make this movie. It wasn't like you read a script and you were like, oh my God, this is the best script I've ever read. It wasn't like that.
No.
Well, which is important. The reason I bring it up is because, yes, at some point in our careers, we have to also make money and survive, and we have children and families and whatever else we want to pay for, cars, hookers, coke, whatever, to each their own. But I mean, that's a main point that I'm trying to drive home, that there's an art part and there's a business part. So, and sometimes you're just doing the art part, because we both shot like an art film a couple of movies ago.
Yeah.
And we knew that wasn't going to sell. Me and you sort of like, we were fully aware of that. And then you make something like Other Plans with Jamie Kennedy, or this horror movie, where the whole purpose of the movie is to make a good movie, but also to sell the movie. It's really, let's push it forward and let's live in mansions.
Yeah, I'm not expecting to win any sort of Academy Award off of a horror film or a comedy.
So when you, let's say, so what is the plan? You edit it? Are you going straight to distribution, trying to get a straight deal, or are you like AFM or somewhere, or what are you going to do?
Yeah, we're going to take it to markets. We're also going to submit it to festivals. specifically to festivals that have a horror niche to them. So, we'll see what happens with that.
Right.
I just got back from Sundance and met with some distributors and sales agents there and had made some good relationships. So
For horror? Like discussing the horror movie?
For the various films that I've worked on, I'm because I'm attached to more than one film at a time, I'm always thinking of all of them at once.
Well, that's good because you have like a roster of movies you can talk to somebody about that you're going to get a percentage of, obviously. So you want to sell all of them.
Exactly. And I also have feature films that I'm attached to, either as a producer, a director, or an actor. I've got a feature that I was just asked to direct that we'll see when it gets made because it doesn't currently have financing. But when it gets that financing, maybe I'll be able to help them secure that financing from some of the connections I made at Sundance. Who knows?
Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for coming on. Unless you have anything to say, I'll wish you farewell.
Thanks for having me on. It was good catching up with you and talking about all this stuff, and I hope it's helpful for all the filmmakers out there listening.
Thanks, man. On next week's episode, we finally have a female filmmaker. Her name is Kira Benzing, so definitely stay tuned for that one. Don't forget you can email us at info@photographyofdirector.com if you have any show ideas or would even want to be on the show. Please let us know.